Hello, folks. This is a live edition of the Big 12 Watch here on Crystal Ball College Football. We are part of a 365 Sports Network. We're going to start doing these every single week. We'll promote them more and give them more notice as we go along. But yeah, it'll just be me about half an hour every single Thursday or Friday. We'll rotate between those 2 days. This will go up as a normal show across your podcast feeds. It'll grow up, as a normal show on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcast, all of those places. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are watching us. We always appreciate that. Leave your comments. When you all leave your comments, I can also answer those as questions. And this can be kind of a wide-ranging show. And so that's what we're going to do on this show. I mean, I've got 5 topics for us to dive into. If we find stuff that we really like, we can spend a lot of time on one topic, or we can keep rolling along with multiple topics. To me, it's whatever you all want to do. It's kind of your all's time this week to ask questions. You all can find me on X/Twitter at NWPod365. I'm at Josh Neighbors _ personally as well. And on today's show, here's what we're going to attack. All right. Group of 5 playoff. We're going to break down and discuss, will that lead to another round of conference realignment? Iowa State and Kansas State. Farmageddon is going to get its moment in the sun, or maybe the clouds, the shade, whatever it is. Ireland's weather's not great, but Farmageddon is going international. So we'll discuss what it means for the Big 12 to have an opening game on a national stage in a foreign country, because I know Florida State and Georgia Tech are doing that this year, but it's a little bit different for the Big 12 to have a big rivalry overseas with 2 teams that sounds like they're going to be in the league for a while. Also, Big 12 coaches under pressure. Who is under the most pressure to succeed in 2024, and what kind of pressure is it? Are there some coaches who are under pressure to win to save their job? Are they having to show proof of concept that what they're doing at their school is going well? Are they 1 year away from the hot seat? Are they in a surprise hot seat? We'll talk about that. Labor changes. The FTC, I think it was, whoever it was, said that no longer can you have, independent, or whatever it was, not independent contractors, but no non-compete clauses are going away. And also Florida State and Clemson, thoughts on them when they will leave the ACC. Sounds like it's just a matter of time. But let's attack. I know in the thumbnail we're talking about Group of 5 playoff, but I think for Big 12 purposes, the most important thing to attack is the fact that Farmageddon is going to be overseas. So in 2025, Iowa State is going to play Kansas State in the season opener in week 0 in Dublin, Ireland. They're going to play at Aviva Stadium August 23rd. Jamie Pollard said they're grateful for the opportunity. I believe it's Aer Lingus is what it's called, to bring that across seas. It's the first opener for Iowa State that is a conference game since the year I was born, 1997. It's also the earliest day that Iowa State's ever kicked off a season before, which is interesting. But here's the thing. So it's funny. We talked about how protected rivalries in the Big 12 were a huge talking point when the season schedule was released. A lot of people were frustrated and upset that not as many rivalries were being protected across the Big 12, as they thought they were. And my counter to that was the Big 12 was adding 4 new schools: UCF, Houston, BYU, and Cincinnati. You've also got 4 new Pac-12 schools coming in Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah. You've also got 2 schools leaving in Oklahoma and Texas. You've got the 8 remaining schools as well. So you've got this hodgepodge of schools, and the one issue that they've got is they don't actually all have a lot of history together. So what do you need to do as a conference to ensure that things kind of go along and they go, okay, well, what you need to do is you need to make sure that they play a bunch, right? And also you guys can leave your comments in the chat if you'd like to also ask your questions. But if you aren't playing each other a whole lot, what do you need to do? Get some games under your belt. So what's the best thing you can do? Rotate the schedule as much as possible. And that's what the Big 12 is trying to do. That's what Brett Yormark is trying to do. And the folks in the conference office, that's what they're trying to do. They're going to try to rotate this schedule as much as possible. A consequence of that was Farmageddon was not protected, and people were upset about this. Now, I think it's okay if you miss every 1 year or whatever, but I think it's a cool thing is that, hey, look, here's Farmageddon on this big stage. It's ironic because this year in 2024, Farmageddon's going to close out the season. Iowa State, K-State closes out the year. Next 2025, it's going to open the entire college football season. Farmageddon is going to be the first game that everybody sees. I think that's interesting that it's going to have that joint role, or it's going to have that role back-to-back years. So those two teams are going to see quite a lot of each other, in I guess a relatively short game period of time. Obviously, seasons are apart, so it's going to be a long time there. But I found that interesting. Not incredibly interesting. Is this a good thing for the league? Look, if you're a K-State fan, I know you're losing a home game, so you are most likely somewhat upset. If you're an Iowa State fan, it's a great rivalry. You want to see it play at these two home places. But if you are the league, this is great news. It is a standalone conference game featuring two big rivals to start off your season. I actually do think, because Avery Johnson and Rocco Becht, hopefully, knock on wood, will both be at those respective schools when this date comes in 2025, August 25th, or whenever it is, 2025. Both of these teams have a chance at being really, really good because number one, they're normally pretty good. And number two, they're going to have quarterbacks who are going to be in their third year of playing. And it's like Rocco Becht, I know, more of a surprise, but performance-wise, extremely competent. And college quarterbacks just seem to get better as they get older normally. So if Rocco follows a pretty standard growth path, and just a standard growth path, if he gets better like normal college quarterbacks do, he's going to be a pretty good quarterback by that point. And then Avery Johnson at K-State, this is a guy who's got worlds and worlds of talent. And look, folks, we could be talking about a Heisman, not just a candidate, but depending on what Avery Johnson does this season, a Heisman front runner entering the 2025 season as a guy who's going to be getting a spotlight, as a guy who is going to be getting a headlining opportunity when this game comes to pass. So I think it's an incredibly exciting thing for the league. Also, you think about this, the ACC has this game in 2024. It's going to be Florida State against Georgia Tech in 2024. Sure, that's pretty exciting stuff for the ACC, but here's the issue. One of those two teams is probably not going to be in the conference for much longer. Florida State seems pretty dead set. Not pretty dead set. Florida State is dead set on leaving the ACC. They are going to leave the ACC. They are going to get out of that conference. They're going to move their tails up and out of that, and get their tails to another conference. Now, what that conference is, the Big Ten, the SEC, if there's one big league, we do not know yet. But they seem pretty intent on getting their asses out of that conference. Clemson probably going to follow them. So the fact that this Big 12 game is not just a game between two teams in the conference, but it's two rivals who have two pretty good quarterbacks, two very good coaches. It's all if they stay, but they've stayed so far. The fact that's the matchup you get to showcase is great news for the league. Big 12 Ireland, Farmageddon in Ireland is a huge win for the conference. People will be excited for this game, not just in the league. All right, let's talk about that group of five playoff that everybody has been talking about. I think it's an interesting concept. So this reporting came out, and it's kind of it's odd reporting, but it came out on the 22nd, so a few days ago. 23rd, rather, excuse me. Group of five leaders discussing a G5 only playoff, realignment as future options. This is from Chris Vanini, who does a great job at The Athletic of covering the lower levels of college football. He says group of 5 administrators have had preliminary discussions in recent months about a G5 only postseason playoff or even wide scale G5 realignment with private equity involved, which I thought was pretty strange. Multiple administrators from within G5 conferences, the American, the Sun Belt, the Mountain West, the MAC Conference USA, told The Athletic that former college and NFL coach Derek Dooley has been the salesman on behalf of private equity firms, making contact with schools. The administrators, who wanted anonymity, made clear that nothing is imminent and they haven't been presented with any numbers yet. But conversations are more real than they've ever been. Dooley did not respond for requests. CBS first reported the talks. So, and one big comment out of all of this, guys, I'm going to read here what a G5 AD said. Quote, "We're taking some leadership here to control our own destiny so that Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey don't make that decision for us," said one G5 AD. All right. So this is the big talking point here, right? The G5 is saying, we don't want our future to be in the hands of the SEC commissioner and the Big Ten commissioner. We want to control what happens to us next. We want to control our future. We want to have say. Because if they left themselves to their own devices, or not their own devices, if they left themselves to the devices of the heads of the SEC and the Big Ten, they're going to be screwed. And it feels like it might be a little bit easier to dispatch of the G5 than it would be the ACC and the Big 12. When it comes to that 12-team playoff, yes, the SEC and Big Ten can have a bigger share of the teams in the CFP, but they can't just shake off the group. They cannot just shake off the Big 12. They cannot just shake off the ACC. They can't just say, you all go and do your own thing. It's not going to work. They cannot do that. It's just not going to happen. With that being said, they can hand wave maybe the G5. But it seems like with what we're seeing right now, with the way things have worked, the G5 is still going to have a seat at the table. Now, I did hear an interesting idea the other day. What if the G5 still maintained a spot in the 12-team playoff, but everybody else who makes it, or everybody else in the G5, top of the G5, has their own playoff, right? So let's just say that Memphis is the best G5 team, conference champion, and so Memphis will go on and play in the 12-team college football playoff. Okay, the other conference champions, the Mountain West Conference champion, the AAC runner-up, everybody else plays in their own playoff. Now, here's a problem. I know that in lieu of bowl games, these might do well because like bowl games actually do pretty well. It's inventory, right? And ESPN just likes having live football on in December. So maybe a G5 playoff does okay, but I'm wondering what is the high interest for it? Is there a lot of interest for it, or does it just end up being bowl games? And what does that end up netting you? Now, I think the other side of that is there seems to be a big value on controlling your own destiny. And you can kind of push this thing along as much as you possibly can, right? You can push this as far as you want, and you get private equity involved. You can have as many teams as you want. You can talk to your television partners, all of that stuff. And so there is some value there, but you're barely in the big dance. You're still getting the one team. So, how important to you is it to send that one? I like the idea of splitting it though. I still want a G5 team involved. I still love the idea of on college football's biggest stage, everybody still has a chance. Everybody can make the dance. A kid can go to Tulsa and still make the college football playoff. I love that idea. So I like the idea of a G5 playoff, But I also like the idea of, hey, if the group of five sends the highest ranked G5 team to the college football playoff, and maybe two, right? So everybody who does not make the CFP, let's just say there's one at large, right? Let's just say that Memphis and Liberty, both end up playing really difficult schedules and, end up making big runs. And let's just, I think Cincinnati's a good example, right? What did Cincinnati have to do to make that 14 playoff? It was not just a one-year performance, right? Cincinnati needed the previous season. They needed that season where they lost to Georgia in the end of the year because they beat some good teams along the way. They needed that team to come back because that first year built up cachet. It built up this team's respectability and record and resume. And I think that was super important for the second year and them getting in the CFP. I think they needed that first season so they could cash in the second season and go as far as they did. So you'd probably need multiple teams, multiple programs to have really good first seasons and build off that. Let's just say you have Liberty and Memphis who had a good 2026 and a really good 2027 and they didn't cross paths, but let's just say they both somehow made it. All right. You could even submit those two teams and everything else. You just play your own G5 playoff. I guess you could do that. You have to wonder at that point, all right, is it better off to do a G5 playoff, but your two best teams are not in it? So that might hurt the playoff itself. Or do you want to send your two best teams and still have your own G5 playoff and say, hey, as opposed to the Bahamas Bowl, we're going to do 10-2 USF against 10-2 Boise State, right? And that's going to be a round one game. And you're going to have 11-1 San Jose State against 9-3 Navy, right? And have an 8-team G5 playoff with whoever you want. Just pick your teams. Maybe you go that route. I don't think it's a terrible idea to do. But also at the same time, Josh, if it's a G5 playoff and you're taking their best teams, how valuable is the playoff, right? I mean, is this really a true playoff? You wouldn't take the Chiefs out of the playoff and still call it a playoff in the NFL. If they didn't make it, you would, but in general, you wouldn't do that. That's a fair point also. But I still think the split is the best way to do it because I want everybody to have a seat at the table. Because if the G5 just goes off by itself, you basically are becoming FCS. How much of a tie are you still going to have to the Power 5? Are you still going to be playing Power 5 teams in bowls? Or are G5 ADs and administrators at the point now where they think the writing is on the wall and they just believe that, hey, they're going one way, we're going another? Let me know what you all think in the comment section about this, but I do think it's an interesting talking point about, do they really think just the writing's on the wall at this point? They think it's best to go their own way because I want them involved in the 12-team CFP. But maybe they think it's best if they go their own way. Wet Blanket says, hey, you are really a wet blanket. It's great news unless you're a K-State fan. I guess I understand that. We'll tackle more of this labor laws, Big 12 coaches under pressure, and FSU and Clemson later on because we went about 20 minutes here. But we're going to start doing this, guys, Friday or Thursday. You can let me know in the comments which day you all want to do this on. We'll go 20 to 30 minutes, but we're going to do it, multiple times here. So I'm going to go shorter on this one. We just attacked two topics on this one today. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, find us on Facebook. Find us on X/Twitter. And also find us wherever you get your podcast, 5 stars in those places.